never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it'll change your life.
Hello, Rob.
Hello, Matt.
We are back in the mythical world of Golarion, home to the Pathfinder campaign setting.
Yes, at long last. Not that long. It hasn't been that long since we talked about Pathfinder, but a return. Pathfinder has been pretty busy lately, and unfortunately, this is not a Pathfinder podcast specifically, so we haven't been able to talk about a lot of it, but they've done quite a few things. They've made some substantial changes prompted by, among other things, the OGL debacle of last year. And
second edition. They're going through their entire campaign setting, redubbing it the Lost Omens campaign setting, and re-releasing a lot of material that existed under first edition in like bigger and brighter hardcover books. And we're going to talk about one of those today.
Yes, we are talking about, the full title is Tian Xia
Lost Omens, Tian Xia World Guide.
Lost Omens, Tian Xia World Guide.
So what is this book? It's a 300-page DMGM-focused campaign setting for the continent of Tian Xia, which is, located on Golarion. It's across oceans and over the spine of the world from Aveston, where much of the previous material was set, and within it you have 24 different regions and gazetteers, in addition to a huge detail on philosophies, factions, religions, gods, and a small bestiary.
Everything that the Inner Sea World Guide is for the Inner Sea region, this is for Tian Xia, the continent to the southeast, and it is as thorough and complete. It is an awful lot. In a good way.
Yeah, it is a huge tome of a book, and every single region gets a incredibly detailed write-up. We will probably only have time to talk about some of the regions and countries and nations that interest us the most. If you're unfamiliar with Tian Xia, it is the part of Golarion. Golarion is like mini fantasy campaign settings, not Earth, and the continents map roughly 1-to-1 to Earth's existing continents, and Tian Xia maps to Asia.
Yeah, and one thing that Pathfinder has been doing in their remaster, but that's what I think they're calling it, their remaster, is weirding it up a little bit. They have gotten away from the 1-to-1 fantasy Europe, fantasy Asia somewhat, though it is still like clear what the influences are, and we'll talk about that some. But the Inner Sea World Guide and this new one for Tian Xia and the one for Magtaal Expanse are all much more innovative, much less racist, and much more interesting. They're very needed and also wanted and lovely updates to deep and complex lore.
Yeah, so I think that is one of the first things is they've taken the first edition Dragon Empire's Gazetteer, which as far as I know did not have any writers of Asian heritage working on it, and enlisted a huge team of writers, most of whom have a ton of experience working on other RPGs or other Pathfinder products, to rewrite the Dragon Empire's Gazetteer as the Tian Xia World Guide. And doing so, I think they've solved a lot of the problems with some of the problematic stuff in there that doesn't adequately represent the cultures, histories, mythologies, and folklore, religions, and magic that inspired this fantasy setting in an authentic way. And that's really good. And then I'll add like another bit of praise here. They've, as Rob said, they've weirded it up. They've also like been working on interconnecting it up. Golarion is a big kitchen sink, but it's like one of those fancy kitchen sinks at the new modern house that has like a little divider between the parts of the kitchen sink where they don't really flow into each other. And this was true all across Golarion. You have steampunk land next to just like normal Egypt land, and it doesn't really matter that they're next to each other. They're trying to do some connections. I would say Tian Xia always had like a better set of connections but they've really worked on like, hey, these places are next to each other. If you have a campaign that goes from one to the other, this is how they might be connected.
Yeah, Matt's tortured metaphor is absolutely correct. This is a lot more interconnected within itself, but also to the rest of Golarion than previous books have been, and that's really cool. They put a lot of effort into making factions and people groups and historical events map across regions rather than being sort of, this is evil Ravenloft land, and this is steampunk land, and
right.
This is not Spain land, and this is fantasy America land. Like those things are still sort of true, but Tian Xia is a lot better about mixing it up and adding a lot of complexity and interconnection. And we've talked a lot about like how cool and important that interconnection is when world building, when talking about history, and how much it helps in building a campaign. So I really appreciated the effort put in to tie everything together.
This is like kind of a weird conundrum, don't you think, Rob? Like it's like Golarion's, or Lost Omens, as we're calling it now, greatest strength and weakness. It's got everything, but it's like going to a Six Flags or a Disney World. It's
a little overwhelming, and it's a little bit sometimes of a grab bag, and not all of the themes play nice with each other. This has always been kind of a problem, right. Is you can go from grim dark to heroic fantasy by riding a horse 100 miles in any direction. But I think the Paizo writers have done a good job of keeping that cool like regional distinction, and also making it a little bit less dramatic and jarring when you travel from one region to another. Yeah.
I mean, I am always of the opinion is that Golarion works best when you run a 6-month campaign in one spot, right? And lean into that. Or go through the book and steal the things that you like for your own system. I have to say, the Tian Xia guide is like, I don't know, I think it's like a more coherent, at least as written in this one, than a lot of Golarion. And if you wanted to just use this as your campaign setting, you could. You would never need the Inner Sea World Guide.
I agree. You could run an infinite number of campaigns in this setting alone. You would never need the Inner Sea World Guide. And there are some like thematic and tonal differences, but there's nothing like going from Arkansas, Wild Westland to, the ancient Egypt land, which is like just up the coast. Like there's nothing quite so dramatic as that strange like tonal difference. And there are some very spooky dark places, and there's some very heroic fantasy places, and it's all meshed together very interestingly, I think.
Yeah, I would say the biggest change in having a 300-page book as opposed to like a 40-page book on Tian Xia and in the approach taken, again, just as a big overview thing in describing the different regions, is that this feels like a campaign setting, where you can have a whole campaign set beginning, middle, and ending here, whereas the Dragon Empires of First Edition were really no different than, like, honestly, the Outer Planes book that Pathfinder published. It's a place for your campaign to go. And yeah, sure, you could have a character who has Tian heritage or is from Tian Xia in your campaign, but it's like, no, this is a place you'll go adventure to later and return. Now it sort of feels like, well, okay, you could go through and end an adventure here.
This is always, I think every fantasy RPG has had this problem, is that there's almost always an Asia land, but the representation thereof ranges from passively offensive to actively offensive. It's very, very rarely is any thought put into it. It's always full of like honorable samurai and inscrutable monks and all this kind of thing. I'm not going to say that this is the first time anyone has ever done a fantasy Asia source book, but it is one of the biggest, best, and, most thorough that I have ever encountered.
Okay, that's like 4 things of stuff that we really liked about this.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit it with a criticism here.
I have 2 specific complaints. Sorry, do yours first.
Okay. My first one is that less stuff changed than I had expected. I was like, wow, this is a chance to really rewrite a lot of stuff, maybe come up with some new things. And while I'm sure we'll get to this one, while 1 or 2 of the most problematic regions have been kind of reworked in the continuity of Golarion, most of it is pretty similar, just more expanded.
Yeah, I did not meticulously go through and compare, but there are parts that have the shine of newness to them, and there are parts that feel like they were quickly polished and rewritten. And yeah, some of the new regions.
Can I give it an example? One of my favorite things is in the ocean realm filled with, fish people and cool stuff like that. There are
Jidao.
Jidao. In Jidao, there are the Waji, which are like giant floating islands that randomly appear and then sink back down to the sea. And they're dangerous both to the aquatic and terrestrial air breathing people there. And if you compare what is written about it in the Tian Xia World Guide and the previous thing, it's like the exact same paragraph. And I was like, man, for going from a 50-page book to a 300-page book, I sure would have loved like an example of one or an expansion of this or a whole new thing to add that's crazy in this one region.
Yeah. I suppose part of the benefit is having it all together in a shiny new book. And to be clear, there is a lot of new information, but Matt's correct that there are some areas where I wouldn't say it's like copy paste. We have discussed a lot of books that were literally copy paste, but minimal updates and minimal additions where there could easily have been some.
Yeah.
I would say
All right, what's your criticism?
My broad, I have one broad and one specific criticism. My broad criticism is that if you are not super familiar with the lore of Golarion, and also especially if you are not familiar with the Pathfinder adventure paths and certain characters therein, there are parts of this book that will be confusing to you. I had to go and like refresh myself on Jade Regent and a couple of the others because there are very important NPCs that figure prominently into the histories and presence of these regions that I'm like, wait, that sounds familiar. Right. I know who that is. Why do I know that name?
Is Pathfinder marveling itself? Is it collapsing under lore?
I want to be kind, but like a couple of these things felt a little like marvelly to me. And yeah, it's not like a huge problem. Like this is a minor complaint, but it definitely is like a thing where you're like, why do you keep mentioning this famous sorceress lady. And I'm like, oh, right, because she was like the center of an adventure path. I remember now. Anyway, it's, again, small things, but this is present throughout the book. And despite Pathfinder Paizo being really good about cross-referencing and having indexes and all that, they do not tell you where to.
It's like you come across the Ruby Phoenix tournament. You're like, that sounds cool. Great. There is an index. You can look it up, but it does kind of assume, you read the Ruby Phoenix tournament adventure module and adventure path, right? You know all this
stuff. And there's some things, like, here's the thing, you don't know, right? So if you read the Ruby Phoenix tournament, you could also read one of the 10 dozen other tournaments that are mentioned by name in bold in this book, which all sound equally cool to me, but only one of them has an adventure path. And how are you supposed to know that unless you are like looking at a reference guide as you do it? This is, again, you don't need to know about the Ruby Phoenix tournament to read this book and get use out of it, but the book sometimes assumes that you do, and that annoyed me just a little bit.
All right. Before you get to your specific criticism, I'm going to sandwich it in with another general compliment, is that the biggest addition to the Gazetteer section is a lot of stuff about daily and yearly life.
Yeah.
And I have never read a Gazetteer that lays things out in this way, so that it's like, here's your average day for people of this region. Here's what a year looks like. It really is a great way to get specific in cultural practices, that if you wanted to set a campaign here, or if you have your players visit, it's going to make it feel really lived in and real. And I absolutely love that way of formatting. Of course, everything has trade-offs. The downside is there's less space for other stuff, but I really enjoyed that.
I could not, this is one of my praises, I could not be more effusive about how much I love this. Each region, of which there are almost 30, which is why Matt and I are only going to talk about all of them, but has basically an infographic, which has the name, the nations, if there's more than one, the peoples, ancestries, languages, and then icons, which represent religions and resources that this land might have. So, this is all in just like half a page. And then they have, like Matt said, a brief overview, a geography, and then a day in that region, and then a year in that region, and then a section on culture, government and important faces, cities, and then international relations. This ends up being shorter, I think, than a lot of Gazetteers that we read, but I find it to be there. I guess if we had infinite time and space, I guess there is more that I would be interested in. But in terms of like running your campaign in these regions, I could not think of a better way to do this. I think this is so cool and innovative, and I love what Paizo has done here.
Yeah. Just because it builds off this, I guess my connected criticism of this Gazetteer is that the emphasis is on what Rob just summarized, right? Daily life, culture, important NPCs, important cities that are like inhabited and stable. Sort of pushed to the back burner are those like weirder, more dangerous places. They're still there. You can still read about them in this Gazetteer, but they're not given the forefront and center, like, go have an adventure here. I think the assumption here is maybe you're going to be playing a adventure path set here, and you want to make the background other encounters that are not your combat, explore a dungeon or a wilderness, more lived in and real. And at that task, it succeeds. However, if you wanted to get this campaign book and then like build the type of adventure that the Pathfinder rule system is made to do, it will be a little more difficult in that you can't flip to a region and have boom 6 like adventure hooks right in front of you, right? The adventure hooks are still there. Like when you read about the NPCs and the history, you're like, oh, okay, these two factions are about at war and this is going to be the catalyst. And I can plot my adventures into this set of kindling and let them light the fuse. But yeah, it's more about, the lived in experience of the intelligent human and human-like species of the place than designed with here's a dungeon, here's a rumor engine, here's a rumor table for you to go to town on.
Yeah, I really don't have many serious criticisms of this. I'm going to save my specific one for when we get to regions because it is about a region. But I suppose that if I were going to muster a criticism is that I guess it technically could have been shorter. I don't know that I would have wanted it to be. It did feel pretty monstrous, but I'm not sure why I would have cut so. Well, okay, sorry. Here's a.
It's 306 pages for people who don't have the book in front.
Sorry, this is a big brain criticism, and maybe I shouldn't say it because I really do respect that Paizo takes organization very seriously in how they present their books. So I'm hesitant to criticize them along those lines. However, as I mentioned, there's a lot of references to Lost Omen's gods, Lost Omen people groups, Lost Omen ancient empires, etc., so on and so forth.
Yeah. You don't know who the Shori are. I do. Right, because I've read the
actually
long
literally
way
what
stuff,
I was literally thinking about the Shori, which I do like. I'm like, I know these things. I just have to remind myself.
For listeners who don't know, they're advanced people from Eastern Garund who built flying cities until they were destroyed by the spawn of Rovagog, and yeah, they had to. One of them flew over here.
I guess this would have made the book even longer, but it would have been good to have a little section on people groups, on specific empires or events. These are all mentioned. There's a nice little timeline, but they throw things at you and then sometimes explain them, sometimes don't, and you're sort of left to your own devices. I don't think this is. Here's the thing:
it's not a solvable problem in one book.
It's not a solvable problem in one book, and it's also not necessarily a problem at all. As long as this doesn't bother you too much, it bothers me immensely. So it's a problem for me. But it's not something that you have to the answers exist. You just have to go looking for them.
One of the great things about Pathfinder is there is a substantial wiki that you can look things up to, and I had to do that while reading this book. I think I have to retract one of the things I said, which is maybe you should read that 100-page Lost Omens World Guide that does give you the basics of the rest of this.
It might actually help, yeah.
Maybe it might actually help because you do kind of need that. Okay.
It depends on how big and how connected and how sprawling you want your campaign to be, or how well versed you want to be as a GM while running it. I am the type of person who felt a little out over my skis, not knowing all of these things, or only having vague memories of having read about them before. So that is, like Matt said, there's a very substantial wiki. You can just go and type these things in and get the context, but it is a thing that you have to do.
Any other big picture stuff? I have to say I really enjoyed the factions. I really enjoyed the substantial set of gods. Like I said, other than you have to go look some things up, the set of gods here, this is enough for your pantheon, right? If you want to set your whole campaign here, you have a full pantheon to play a Pathfinder or a D&D style game with clerics and stuff like that. The factions are really cool. Pathfinder has always been known for having its cool philosophies about the divine in addition to gods.
I wanted to gush about the philosophies for a second because I am the I am the worst kind of quirked up white boy. I do love my, my Eastern philosophies and reading Taoism and Buddhism and things like that. But like, they've got a really like a brief but like well written section on all of these different philosophies, and it's not like one to one, but it's clearly like deeply inspired by the during the Warring States period. There was the 100 schools of thought from which emerged, Confucianism, Taoism, Mohism, legalism. In China specifically, like a bunch of like broad and interconnected philosophies and ways of thinking. And I thought that the way that they echoed that, but like made these obvious like fantasy Golarion, Tian Xia philosophies was super neat. These, I think, would be really interesting to implement in any sort of Tian Xia game. They go really well with the religion section that Matt mentioned. A huge pantheon of distinct and interesting gods. Some of these are some of my favorites. I'm so on polytheistic fantasy religions in general these days, but guys like the golden dragon carp and the black daimyo, old rat woman. I just like, there's a bunch of like extremely cool deities with interesting portfolios and cool connections to other gods and to other regions and to events in the setting.
So one of the things I really like about Pathfinder abandoning as part of their remaster alignment is that alignment for deities has been abandoned for edicts and anathemas, and this gives you a much better picture of what the god is about. They even did this with NPCs, right? Classic since like 2nd or 3rd edition, NPCs have been described with, neutral, evil, elf, wizard or whatever. Like that really tells you anything. But now the alignment word has been replaced with, for all the NPCs in this book, with just a 1 or 2 word descriptor of their temperament, philosophy, or goals. And that's so much useful to have a detailed oriented dragon king or a, ruthless warlord or something like that.
Yeah, it tells you so much more. And like Matt said, there's the deity version of this is that they have edicts and anathema, which is, again, so much more useful than lawful evil or neutral good or whatever. Like, Sun Wukong has,
or you can worship Hai Feng, whose anathema is fake friends.
That's
literally.
Right, he's got fake friends. If you're
he hates that.
A devotee of Sun Wukong, whose areas of concern are drunkenness, nature, and trickery, his edicts are live freely, drink, and play pranks. Anathema is, let social pressure change your behavior. Never let the man
never let
get
the
you
haters.
down. Yeah, don't let the haters get you down. Anyway, this I think is so much more useful than alignment. It's brilliant. I really like what they've done. And every time, you encounter a NPC, it will say, brutal male, human warrior or something like that instead of lawful evil, and it tells you so much more. It's just so much better. It's really good.
I love the Pantheon, the Celestial Court as they're called here. I think it's a better collection of deities than the Avestan deities from the other half of or quarter of Golarion. That the original Golarion gods have their standouts. Everyone loves Caden, Kaelin.
We all love
Caden,
like Kaelin.
But a lot of the gods are really like placeholders. They were not. I wonder if Pathfinder wishes they could rewrite them from the beginning.
I think
to
they're
make them
in
a
the
little more,
process of killing some gods off. Like, isn't that happening? Like right now, there's some kind of. I forget what it's called.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I heard about this and said I'm not going to pay attention to this because I can't stand or deal with like delayed like marketing things that like try and get me, to generate interest by following along. Like I gotta check out for my own good.
No, I've only like picked this up passively. I just like Googled it because I was like, hang on a second, are all these gods still alive? Speaking of marveling themselves, I don't like hate this conceit, but I, like Matt, I will not be playing. I am interested in the outcome, but I'm not investing until it's all done.
Yeah, So like there are like some minor quibbles. Like my favorite deity here, the 1,000-souled chorus, a kind of amalgam god of 1,000 names and faces. Diva speaks for those and defends those who can't protect themselves. So there are like some different parts of the world where this god I thought would be very important, but they're not. That's okay. I guess you don't have time to go into the religion of every region, but
right.
I was assuming there would be like a revolution in the one, not the one that I think could have used a substantial rewrite, the not like China after the Cultural Revolution region.
We'll need to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, we're not on to specific regions yet. Other things about the religions, the factions, the dragons. Hey, one major rewrite of the rules is dragons actually play a much more substantial role in the history of the Dragon Empire.
This is a super cool... Sorry, I loved this. The history in fantasy in general, but also in fantasy games, is not always worth engaging with. There is one really neat thing in the history of Tian Xia, which is that the sort of big ancient ancestor empire Yixing was secretly a ruled by a dragon empire, like a dragon emperor, a dragon family, and then as it collapsed, one of the advisors, literally rewrote history, so everyone forgot that it was this, dragon empire, and so it's this, the greatest secret of Tian Xia history. It's a cool bit,
and I think that is new.
I think that's new as well.
I don't remember that from the Dragon Empire
I think this is
Gazetteer.
The thing, is that Tian sorry, I don't know this for sure. If my memory serves, Yixing was in it before, but there was no indication that it was this sovereign
supernatural
dragon. That was running
actual.
This is the twist, or the new twist for the Tian Xia World Guide, which is cool. I like that.
I like I said, I really like the way that dragons are described and implemented. It feels very evocative of interesting real world mythology, but enough that you can enough of a twist that you can, let's say, play a game with it. I love the description of the celestial court and like how it functions, and the way like spirits and gods are way more important in Tian Xia. As I read through the Gazetteer, I didn't always see, and again, it varies from region to region. One of the things it says in this book is there's no way to describe all of these regions with one broad brush, and true, fine. But as I was reading through the Gazetteer, I didn't like notice any specific regions where like the celestial court and the like interactions between the celestial bureaucracy and human life were like super forefronted. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. There's a lot of regions. There's 30 of them.
No, I noticed the same thing as well. And there's not a ton of...
This seemed like a thing that the authors of the revised book put in at the beginning, but they're like wasn't... without redoing everything from the ground up and writing a completely brand new campaign setting, which actually I would have preferred.
Yeah.
To really implement this concept of the celestial court being super important.
They also make this great mention. They talk about when in the religion section, and treading carefully around Orientalism, but they say that the denizens of Tian Xia are polytheistic, but also syncretic and pragmatic, right? Mixing and matching beliefs and philosophies to suit their needs. This accurately describes a lot of Near East, East Asian religions. But I don't know that this is reflected, like Matt said, in the campaign setting very well. It's not. Didn't bother me a lot, but I didn't notice its absence. Like I said, there are a bunch of these gods that I loved and I thought were super cool, but there's only a handful that make appearances in the regions themselves. And when religion is mentioned at all, it's usually the same half dozen guys. A lot of these cooler, more niche deities are not super important where you might think they would be, which is too bad. That would have been a cool thing to see.
Yeah. There are some great factions, which, again, it's one of my favorite things to steal from as a dungeon master from any kind of campaign setting.
One of these I love so much. Sorry, I
go ahead, share your favorite.
There's all of these are good. My favorite that just like blew my skirt up was the Shattered Lotus. And the Shattered Lotus is it's described as a conspiracy of deposed nobles, officials, and the ever faithful who work within the bureaucracies of the successor states to incite unrest, setting the stage to one day restore the fallen Lunghua Empire. This is the most recent empire, tyrannical evil that fell into which sort of like the present day Tian Xia exists, but these guys are all trying to bring it back. This is an echo or a callback to an inversion of the White Lotus Society, which is a secret society of philosophers in China trying to like maintain order and promote good thought and philosophy and protect the people from evil predations by tyrants. I love the idea of like an evil White Lotus. This is so fucking cool.
Yeah, no, it's a great faction, and like reading the couple paragraphs and then some of the NPCs that are adherents to it throughout the book is like, hey, are you doing your own campaign setting? I bet you have a big old empire that used to exist, right? Take some inspiration from this. Yeah, this is great. And yeah, the turning the White Lotus on its head is pretty brilliant. The Shattered Lotus.
But yeah, all of these are good. The factions are great.
There's a great evil warrior one, the Cut.
The Cut.
There's a great kind of egalitarian pirate one, the Ante.
The Ante is so cool, yeah. They've got these cool tests of virtue, which I really liked. They're rituals that you can do to basically like gain feats. One of them you can use to gain immortality, but they're expensive and time consuming and require you to do rituals. But this is the type of character progression that I love to see in RPGs. And yeah, I think there's a handful of them. I also think it's an interesting design space, and you could add more. I love these tests of virtue. I thought they were cool.
Super, super great. I think my favorite part of this book is absolutely talking about the dragons, the factions, the gods, and the philosophies.
Same, 100%.
Okay, but we're on to that's about 50 pages of the book. The other 250 are details of the over 24 but under 30 regions of the Tian Xia continent. It's seas, it's oceans, it's underwater countries, it's islands. Where do we want to start?
Well, I think we have to start on a down note, because this is my second major criticism of this whole book, and sort of just like an unfortunate circumstance of the alphabet. But we need to talk about the first region in the book, Bachuan. And we need to talk about it because it sucks. And in a lot of different ways. And it's unfortunate because if you were picking up this book and reading it and the first region you got to was this one, you would get the incorrect impression that they weren't very good or very interesting. And almost everyone is better than this one, but this one is specifically bad in 3 or 4 ways. So let's start by talking about this one, and we can only go up from here.
So there could be other inspirations for this, but considering that this part is basically exactly the same as it was way back 10 years ago in the Dragon Empire's Gazetteer, that this is a thinly veiled like we really hate the Gang of Four from Chinese history. It's there's a not Mao grandfather Pei, and then is succeeded by grandmother Pei, Mao's wife, who sorry for just calling her Mao's wife. I should know her name.
I don't know her name, unfortunately. Sorry.
But yeah,
sorry,
and
China
it's
scholars.
Yeah, it's she's like Mao but worse, but like the more evil version, which is I feel like a thing that made it into popular understandings of like modern PRC history in the United States, but obviously real history is way more complicated and interesting to that, and this place could be way more complicated and interesting.
It also, so Bachuan is also the northern side of a peninsula that is split in half. You know, I just do with that what you will, I suppose. So to be specific, this Yixing city-state, Bachuan, a young farmer wanted to create an ideal communal society, grandfather pay, and he created this nation, but that was supposed to be a republic, but it wasn't a republic, and it has re-education camps, and everybody has to worship grandfather pay and then grandmother pay, and everyone's poor and hungry and brainwashed. And like, I don't even hate.
It's the Kim family, you know. Yeah, it's Mao or like just a caricature version. And yeah, I would agree. Like, I don't hate the idea of having fantasy communism in a role playing game, in a fantasy role playing game. But does it have to be so? I don't know.
It doesn't.
So heavy-handed.
It doesn't even have to be good. Like, I obviously, I think it should be good. But like, you could, like, there's what's the name? There's one in the Lost Omens World Guide. There's like that radically egalitarian city-state where everybody has the same title and wears masks or something like that. And then there's like a first citizen, and they're always like executing people. Again, that's like
Galt.
Yeah, it's like a terrible caricature of like a revolutionary state, but I'm not like mad about it. I thought it was kind of fun, you know, a little bit extreme. Like, you could make like a communist fantasy area, but like this is just like very like we hate Mao. Like, it just was like a very very like pointed attack like on Maoism, on the Kim family, you know, not to necessarily defend that, but also like you could be more interesting. Like this felt like very kind of lazy. And then also, another complaint that I have is that there's a bunch of tapestry people that live here. Speaking of the Ruby Phoenix tournament and Haojin and the Haojin tapestry, this sorcerer, this wizard Haojin drew a bunch of people from Golarion into a magical tapestry, and they lived in this demi-plane for a while, but then they all got kicked out into Tian Xia, or they chose to leave, and a bunch of them live in Bachuan. It's very confusing. It's like it's complicating this already like weird region to a sort of bizarre degree.
The sorceress was like trying to save peoples that like would be crushed under the turning wheel of history, and their like legends and languages and cultural traditions forgotten, and they're spit out. I think it could be like an interesting hook for having a character, right? For me, this always comes back to, can it be used in my game for a character that's out of time and out of place?
Sorry, let me narrow my criticism.
It's got a little. Yeah.
I like the tapestry and the tapestry people. I'm just like, why are they here? There doesn't seem to be any serious interaction or conflict between them and the people of Bachuan. It's just like a lost opportunity and sort of like a confusing inclusion. Sorry, this was a lot of complaining about a single region when I liked most of them, but they should have changed the name of this so it doesn't go first. Really, I should have rewritten this entirely, but like...
Well, the one that would have gone first was Amandadar, which used to be the not Spain colony in the middle of the Dragon Empires. Yeah. Because I feel like it was written to be like, well, where are my knights? What if I have to play a knight and my DM's setting this here? I mean...
We must have a colony so that there can be knights.
We must have a colony. So the colony has been overthrown, and, it's, no longer part of Taldor. It's an independent nation. It is a military dictatorship. I don't know. Another comment on revolutions by Paizo. Paizo is very anti-revolution.
Very anti-revolution. I think we're finding in
this.
It's funny how much they are.
Badron. Yeah. So
it's a stratocracy, Matt, not a military dictatorship.
Sure.
Please.
That sounds like something someone from a military dictatorship would call it. Anyway, I liked the reworking of this. Again, I think one of the constraints here is that Paizo seems very tied to their continuity. They do move the timeline forward with the adventures. Like, this guide seems to take place 10 to 20 years after the first guide or whatever. But, I would say if you can give us something better, no one's going to care that you remade a land or a region if you made it into something cooler or more interesting or more complex or had more opportunities for adventure. So
Okay, we
speaking of opportunities for adventure, let me talk.
Yeah, let me talk about the regions that we like because we were running out of time.
Yeah. Let's see. Which one do I want to talk about first? I'm gonna go with the land of 10,000 heroes, Xian.
Aeon.
Yes. Xian. And so people practice cultivation here. There's a lot of, wandering heroes who become grandmasters and duel each other. But the mystic, pact of the land is there can only be 1,000 grandmasters at a time. So they're constantly rising and falling. And one great rewrite of the lore is the one that gets elected king emeritus has to give up his powers in a wish to kind of keep this cycle going. This is a great, this is one of those ones where it's set your whole campaign here, right?
Yeah. I mean, this one, it's the whole thing is Avatar land. It's Kung Fu land. Everybody knows martial arts. There are 4 competing martial arts schools. There's exactly 1,000 grandmasters. It's incredible. It's it's a great place to have a whole campaign where you were just running around and randomly having kung fu battles with guys in the street. It's sick. I love Xian.
Right. Yeah, and there's all lots of details. Not only are there the philosophies that are spread throughout parts of Tian Xia, right? But this one unlike many other places, is given specific schools and approaches and thoughts to, the practice of cultivation and of, martial arts. 2 fears: warm fur coats and martial arts.
This one was very cool. I also had some very cool looking NPCs to interact with.
What's another one? What's one of your favorite regions?
Matt, I've got several, but you know that I have to go with Hongol, which is fantasy Mongolia, the open steppe, united by Budugan, the half giant and first Khan. I love this place. I'm a sucker for fantasy Mongols. I'm stealing so many ideas. This is not new to Tian Xia, but it's got an update. A bunch of cool art, the sections that we talked about, a day in the life of and a year in the life of and the culture. And I've always liked this, and I thought they did it real justice in the Tian Xia World Guide.
Right. This is one where, for example, you're not going to find a clear little set of campaigning in Hongol hooks here, but if you take the time to read the 10 pages or so, they will create themselves as the tensions over reuniting the peoples, reconquering things, or sort of feuding factions in the steppe lands are all there.
As we good setting writing, just sort of adventures sort of produce themselves. And there's a couple of great hooks that I love here. There is, every year there's an enormous storm. This is called the Quoquetengir, which is an enormous storm that leaves a bunch of mutilated corpses behind. Nobody knows why. And then in the summer, there's an Anthem, basically just like a big games, competitions, hunting, fighting, riding, shooting, falconry. Both of these things lend themselves to either part of or a full campaign, like, or a launch to one. Like there's plenty to start from. And I liked I loved the culture that they included and the detail that they gave to the Khan and his advisors. I love this.
There's so many cool places scattered throughout these regions. One that I wanted to highlight is the crash site of Agamazar, the Star Titan.
The Star Titan, yes.
Who things are not like... So, again, this is a thing in a gazetteer that you should include more hooks than... The hook we're given is fine, which is the new Guardian of the Corp... Oh, sorry, what is the Star Titan? Not everyone knows what the Star Titan is. It seems like a giant robot or a Galactus. Very few do. That crashed to Earth in ages past. Was it a giant galaxy eater monster? A big magic guy? Who knows? It's whatever you want it to be. It's obviously a giant dungeon for your players. I love putting giant crazy dungeons for my players. The hook we're given is great, which is that, things are like awakening. The new Guardian is sending in more patrols and expeditions into this corrupting Star Titan's corpse. But yeah, I always want more hooks and informations about these things.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that they've really leaned into the kaiju of Tian Xia. There's gigantic monsters in a bunch of these regions, and they figure prominently in a lot of the culture and society, religion, day-to-day functioning of them. And it's... Right.
Winshu, where a kraken basically rules the land.
Yes, yeah. Wanshu is great. Yes, this one's like a little... I don't want to say it's like thin, but there's not quite as much...
Yeah.
But the central idea is so cool. There's this kraken, Janagor, who is helping saving these people who now live in a flooded land that was, submerged by the season of the torrent, and they all call him the divine savior, except it turns out that Zanagor caused the torrent himself to set himself up as a tyrant and bring Golarion under his control. It's a great hook. It would be you'd have to do some legwork, but it'd be a great setting or just a great place to visit. Yeah, that's just just terrific.
Yeah, there's so many regions ruled by evil Onai, evil sorcerer, evil kraken that are just like ripe for adventuring. Like one day we'll have to take these down, and plenty of places where like there's a government that's like not terribly evil, like Minkai, I guess would be one of my favorite ones, and I think one of the best regions, and it's because I think in the old like canon not much had been established about it, is Minata, the Wandering Isles, like a huge archipelago that's like half again the size of the whole continent.
I loved this one.
And and there's not, I think, much published in previous books unless it's in a book I, never bought. And I think maybe it benefited from that. Whereas some of the more established ones that we've already talked about, right? The writers were really constrained.
Yeah, this one was great because not only is it neat, there's hundreds of islands, there's a sleeping kaiju underneath them, there's reefs that keep them safe from the shogunate and other people who would want to try to conquer the islands, but also there's room
for floating pirate city.
Yeah, there's room for multiple nations and people groups and cultures within. This feels to me like itself like half a gazetteer. There's like so much going on in Minata alone. Like if I were gonna gun to my head, pick one to run a campaign, and it would be this. There's so much to work with here.
Yeah, no, I would say this one's definitely in my top 3. And of course, I don't think you can go wrong with some of the underwater kingdom that we had talked about before, with its floating islands and trade towers and giant crevasse, which no longer has krakens in it. They decided, wouldn't it be cool if they threw their dead in there and now it's filling up and the dead are rising? And yeah, this is a huge, cool hook for adventure. My other top 3 of these regions is Goka. I love Absalon, the other kind of Goka in Golarion, this trade city where there's intrigue and commerce and capital and street fights.
It's like fantasy Singapore, but more. But yeah, it's also I loved the government section of Goka. Their parliament is
parliament problems.
It's they. It's half of a peerage, and the other half is, drawn semi-randomly from high society, and it's very complicated, and there's a bunch of weirdos on it.
As all parliaments are.
I loved the way it was described and listed, and the Goka, you could do a whole campaign in very, very easily. There's a bunch of super cool. Also, the art and culture for this one is especially good. There's a bunch of cool stuff happening here.
Yeah. The art, we haven't talked about this yet. The art and the monsters, shout out to, the Great Flood. There are some excellent monsters here. The art is exceptional, as Paizo's art has been for nearly a decade now. I've noticed a trend in their world guides in that the world guide art is very much about the people you would encounter in the background, or NPCs that you would interact with on a daily basis, or key moments. There are so many faces of NPCs in this, which is just a thing I have not seen in a gazetteer. There's probably 400 portraits of NPCs. Incredible. When have you seen that in a book? I do notice it is an interesting shift in that I would say previous Paizo gazetteers have a lot more splash pages and pictures of adventurers doing things, fighting things, escaping things. This is more people are living, right? I don't know what that means.
No, that's such a good point. I now that you mention it, I realize that too. I think it's a good thing. I think moving the emphasis away in the gazetteer from the adventurer is fine, because the adventurer is still front and center. The adventurer is still the subject of the adventure path, and all the other books. Yeah. I think that's an interesting and compelling choice.
Right. In a previous thing, the art for Minkai, instead of being a market where people are trading, would probably be, I don't know, two guys with swords and armor dueling or something like that.
Right. I have a bunch of, the ones we mentioned are my favorites. I do want to shout out, just because, is the section on Tang Mai, which is a jungle nation. It's got magic. It's maybe a little bit like fantasy Cambodia or something like that, fantasy Khmer. But the thing that I love about this is there are so many great food descriptions. Whoever was writing this did a really good job of describing what they eat in Tang Mai, and I really respect them for that. There's here's what they have for breakfast, here's what they have for lunch, here's what they have for dinner. Love it. I love it. Give me more of that.
Yeah. Also, it's a cool, if you want to have a magic campaign at a magic
this
school.
One's very magical. Yeah.
It's a great magic campaign. Some concluding thoughts from me, Rob, if we're ready.
I think we're ready. I could ramble about this forever, but I think the listeners get the idea.
Reading gazetteers can be tough. This one, I think, does a lot of really good work in layout and formatting and indexing and bolding to make that as painless as possible. But, sometimes you're still going to read a paragraph that has 25 proper nouns. And that can be
Yeah.
that can be a little rough.
Yeah.
But if this is I firmly believe that if you want to do a campaign setting in one region or hopping between regions, this is a great book to have. And my only criticism is that it gets back to the essential conundrum that we've already discussed of Golarion and Lost Omens that's been there since its birth, which is it's a kitchen sink setting, and so there's not really supposed to be a reason to go between these places, but given the constraints and given the constraints of established canon, I think the authors did a pretty good job of making this more interesting. In my own personal opinion, I wish whoever at Paizo was in charge said, rewrite anything you want. We'll cut any of these, right? Because is anyone going to be sad if we redo them and make them better? I certainly won't.
Yeah, I have to agree with the big criticism, and this is a personal preference. I am not really interested in big kitchen sink fantasy. I'm also not interested in this not Asia, not Europe fantasy as much as I used to be. I did really enjoy reading this, so that's when I say I'm not interested, I'm just not as interested as I used to be. But it's rough because there's Pathfinder is doing a good job of shedding all of its baggage, but it still has plenty. And I agree with Matt that a full rewrite would have been better, and also just maybe something else entirely. Maybe all of this talent taken and given an effort and energy and art and given to something brand and beautiful and new. And I think
second planet. Make it another planet in the or just take the same continent and say there was a magic spell. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's fantasy.
It's fantasy. It's fantasy. Do a Marvel snap, whatever. They could have done. This is not a criticism. I know why they did this. I don't. It's not necessarily a criticism. Just I'm just wish casting, I guess. But yeah, I would have liked. There were some really tremendous writers and artists working on this, and if they had just been able to leave aside all the old stuff and just make something, even with the same intent. We've talked about how they're willing to get weird. They're willing to make it strange. They have creativity on the team, but they're still a little bit bound by, I don't know, just the structure that I no longer think is serving them, which is fantasy grab bag. That is a big brain criticism. I agree with Matt on this, but it is a thing.
And this is my personal opinion when it comes to gazetteers. This gazetteer, the Tian Xia World Guide, absolutely succeeded at the task of turning Tian Xia into, hey, over here there are samurai, place for people from the Taldor or, and or Absalon to go adventure in and then come back to, into its own fully realized interconnected campaign world, like the stuff on daily life and the seasons and the food and the government. It's all fully thought out. What is sacrificed is those weird spots where heroes are needed in what the Pathfinder role-playing game is built to do, go explore wildernesses, go to dungeons, have combats with monsters, in addition to social and role-playing encounters. They didn't add a whole lot, the Star Titan, that was in the other one. I would have loved to see more of that, but again, you'd have to sacrifice this other thing. So I don't think there's a right answer. That's just I'm laying it out there based on your personal preferences. But if you want a fully realized world, this does a pretty damn good job of giving you one.
Yeah. It really, the thing is, as what it set out to do, it succeeded at masterfully. This is the, for what it is, the pinnacle of the form.
Well, speaking of Pathfinder and Tian Xia, one of our next adventure paths will really turn the clock back both in in-world time and in publishing time as we review the adventure path Jade Regent. along with some other ones in an upcoming episode. I was just checking our ongoing Pathfinder Adventure Path series, and that one's one of the next ones.
Long overdue and relevant now that,
I suspect the Min Kai chapter of this will be incredibly useful if you were running that adventure path.
That would probably be a good time to revisit Jade Region if you're looking for an adventure path to run. We will tell you when we review it if it's worth doing.
Yes. And if you enjoyed our review of Lost Omens Tian Xia World Guide, please let us know. You can always drop us a message at dmofnone@gmail.com, or you can go to the show notes and click the link to join our Discord. And if you want even more episodes, you can always head over to patreon.com/dungeonmasterofnone for $5 a month. You'll get another bonus episode every month and access to our huge back catalog of homebrew, game master aids, and adventures we've written ourselves.
So thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.
醉了梅园，恍若人生是初见。青丝染了双眼，携手共赴尘世万千。心事褪了红颜，眼前相思已凌乱。泪光藏了誓言，相约一生何曾改变？花开生烟花易残，谁在拨琴弦啊？情到深处人已散，独自唱离别爱，暮色去迟春已晚，满意如梦空嗟叹，任它似水流年。岁月分不清何处是归期，恨不知心底的在意。月光如水换尽了浮华的旧事，唯愿留一笔相依。漫漫长夜舍不下华发追青丝，不敢看你悄然远离。只盼你我皆寻常的意，再相约不离不弃。